Welcome to the Hollywood Outsider, an award-winning weekly entertainment podcast. On this very episode, what we are going to talk about is HBO's House of the Dragon Season 1. This is going to be a full-on spoiler cast. We're going to discuss the entire season, all the characters, and fun plot points, maybe even a few dances with dragons. Let's get on with the show. Amanda is going to lead this one, but before we get into House of the Dragon, I just want to mention that we already do have a Black Adam spoiler review out, as well as there's been some great topics in the past few weeks, so please go back in our back catalog and check that out, as well as episode 500 about a month ago, which is nothing but fun. So check those things out. You can always go to thehollywoodoutsiders.com. We're also on Patreon at patreon.com/thehollywoodoutsiders. My name is Aaron Peterson. Joining me today is my fellow Hope Amanda Sink.
Hello, hello.
Hello. So John Davenport and Troy Heinrichs won't be on for this episode because they have not completed House of the Dragon Season 1. If you haven't seen it, you're not going to want to listen past here. This is going to be House of the Dragon Season 1. And for this portion, I'm going to turn over to Amanda because she's going to lead this conversation and I get to just relax. Thank God.
So House of the Dragon obviously is a spinoff from the Game of Thrones series. This is based on parts of the novel Fire and Blood. It is set 200 years before the events of Game of Thrones and 172 years before the birth of Daenerys Targaryen, and 100 years after the Seven Kingdoms is united by the Targaryen conquest. So it's portraying the beginning of the end of House Targaryen, the events leading up to and covering the Targaryen Civil War of Succession, known as the Dance of the Dragons. Aaron, What were your expectations coming into this series? And how did the first season live up to those? Because we're coming off of a Game of Thrones high for some, not so high for others. But what were your expectations?
I love Game of Thrones. I don't have any issue. I have some concerns about the final two seasons. We've talked about it ad nauseum. We don't need to rehash that. But I was still psyched for a new Game of Thrones show. What I found interesting was I was also really stoked for the Lord of the Rings show. That didn't really impact me at all. I haven't even gone back to that one. But House of the Dragon caught me. And I think why it caught me so hard, even more than my expectations, is because it wasn't what I was expecting. I did expect a lot more of the Game of Thrones that I know, and instead it kind of reintroduces some of the backstory that I've heard of but didn't know the details of, while also kind of finding its own footing and becoming its own show, and did things completely different. I mean, for the first 5 episodes, you're bouncing around in time all over the place. And then you take a huge shift in time, and I think episode 6, right, where we switch Rhaenyra and Alicent to the older versions. Yep. And, that still works. I mean, those are jarring shifts, and I think it threw people off at first, and now we finally have arrived where people are going to stay the same age. And it still worked. I mean, it's Game of Thrones, but it's also its own version of it. It's a completely different show, while still being respectful of what came before it. And that was kind of surprising. I thought for sure it would just be the same Game of Thrones, and I feel like it's made its own stamp. What about you?
Yeah, I think I kind of went into this with lower expectations just because Game of Thrones was such a turning point in success that I didn't think that a spinoff could live up to its name.
Sure.
And quite honestly, I still don't think it has the same magic as a lot of the latter seasons of Game of Thrones. I think once you get past like the first season, maybe even the second season, is where Game of Thrones really picks up its heat, and it kind of continues that momentum throughout the series. And I'm hoping we see a little bit more of that in this show, in House of the Dragon. In the beginning, I really loved it. It had a little bit of lackluster when it started to make the change of characters and cast. But then by the end, I'm fully invested again. And so it wasn't a perfect season of television for me, but it was a damn good season of television for me. And that's ultimately what matters.
Yeah, I don't think it was perfect by any means. I mean, I can't tell you how few shows ever have a perfect season. Westworld season 1, and that's it. And Game of Thrones probably season 3 or 4, one of them. But there are very few that have a perfect season. I don't need perfect. I just want engaging and enthralling, and that's what I got from House of the Dragon. It ended up being more about the machinations of power and these real pivotal switches in politics that are so important. I think, of course, people love the dragons and whatnot, but the dragons were the least interesting part for me. I was fascinated by all the machinations, all of the moves that people were making ahead of time, and how how they were addressing certain changes, like, hey, the princess's kids don't look anything like her husband, things like that. I mean, there were some things that took me out of it, and I think, look, I respect that they're trying to expand it for people of color. I think that's important for the show because this is a very fictional world. I don't think the wigs always work. That probably is the only thing that ever took me out of anything. And that goes on all characters, not just people of color. All characters. I don't think all these blonde wigs work great. That's the only thing that really took me out of the show. Everything else I thought worked very, very well. Great actors across the board.
An interesting thing that I found out is that the intention of George R.R. Martin was not for them to be white. The Targaryen line, I guess, was supposed to be black. And I don't think that they had the white hair that they have in the show. They had the traditional Targaryen hair, where it was more that platinum blonde. So a lot of the changes that were made on screen from the books, of course, when you have it starting from Game of Thrones, you have to continue those into House of the Dragon. So the intention, I guess, was for them to look differently than they do and to have more prominent black casting into the writing. It was in there. So
I don't know anything about that. So I'm just going by the TV show. I don't dabble too much into the books because obviously when a guy can't finish them, it's not fair.
That's true. So you talked about liking this. What was the moment that sold you on it? Because for some people, there's like an obligation to watch House of the Dragon because of Game of Thrones. Some people were genuinely interested in where this was going. I'm sure others were just pressured because of spoilers online that they felt they had to watch it and couldn't wait. So what was the moment for you where you're like, hell yeah, I'm on board?
I don't know. Probably, I don't know if I had a moment where I was just completely Daemon's character. I guess, I don't know if there's a specific moment, but really how he treated his brother in total disdain and lack of appreciation for his royalty. I love that in characters. I'm a big Rebel fan. I like Rebels. And just seeing that disdain in his eyes and how Matt Smith plays Daemon, and he's a masterful leaner. Like, I feel like that's half his character is just him leaning on shit.
It is.
He's just randomly leaning on walls and leaning on poles and leaning on dragons. He's just leaning all the time. But when he does, he's always got a mischievous look on his face, and it's with great disdain that he looks at many people. It's the character of Daemon as a whole. And in that first episode, I really feel like you need a character to kind of pull you in. And he was the character that pulled me in. Because I will say, like, the first episode, I wasn't sure that this was going to be as good as I wanted it to be. My expectations were probably too high at that point because I loved Game of Thrones. But Daemon was the character that kept me engaged and kept me interested. And then when I came to episode 2, and mostly because Daemon was involved, and every episode I was petrified he was going to be killed off. So yeah, I don't really have a specific moment, but I have a specific character. How about you?
I have a little bit of both, and I will agree with you tremendously on Matt Smith and Daemon as a character too. And there were, I don't know if you watched like any of the behind the scenes, inside the episode recap things, but there was one episode where they talked about his character and the intention from Matt Smith to portray compassion and caring when Emma dies and Rhaenyra has to essentially kill or cremate her mom and unborn brother or baby brother. And that moment where he chooses to show compassion and he shows this difference in his character, I don't think that we would have liked Damon as much if it weren't for Matt Smith, because if this character was written to be more just kind of cold-hearted and didn't have those moments, we wouldn't have as much ability to root for him. And I really do struggle, and we'll talk more about Damon, but I struggle to not cheer for him at times. And that is mostly an attribute to Matt Smith.
Yeah, I know. I think it was Sarah Hess, who's an executive producer. I remember she had kind of gone on record and saying, I don't understand how people find, like, are all supportive
attracted
of Damon because
him?
she thinks he's, attracted to him and he's an awful person. And I'm like, have you ever seen the show You? Because that dude literally kills people. And people are like, oh, he's so hot. People like just rebels, man. Good looking rebels. Find a good looking rebel and they're in. It's natural. People always date the wrong people. This is why.
Well, and Matt Smith does look good in this show. I'll give him that.
He's one of the few people, I will say, that looks better with the wig than his natural hair color.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, he looks good with it. Well, particularly in the later episodes when he has like the shorter haircut, like the bob pulled back with like a half ponytail. That's where his moments really shine.
Oh, it was good. Yeah.
But the moment for me was pretty early on, and it's when Rhaenyra and Alicent are sitting underneath the tree, Kissing, and they're kind of having that like, oh, there's a little bit of romantic tension here. And for me, I was like, this is bold for them to put that pretty early. And I know Game of Thrones generally has a pretty bold demeanor to its series and to its episodes, but I didn't expect them to throw that so early on. And from that moment, I was like, where is this going to go? I'm curious because these are younger girls and I wanted to see what was going to happen with these characters. And really, Millie Alcock is just such a tremendous young Princess Rhaenyra that I just am so drawn to her as an actress, and actually had a really hard time being able to separate from her no longer being in the show because we moved into an older Rhaenyra.
Yeah, she was really good. That surprised me because when she first came on, I was just, I don't know about her. Like, I'm supposed to be following her. Is she that? And then I think it took me like an episode or two to really get behind her as an actress. But once I'm like, okay, she's a lot strong. She's a better actress than I thought. And she's much stronger than I thought as a character. So I could get behind her a little bit more.
Well, one of the things that a lot of people complain about, or at least had some concerns about, is that there are a lot of progressive shifts in the stories because of the series of time jumps. I mean, there's about at least four significant time jumps. How did you feel about not only that having a shift in the story, but also recasting actors, some of them even multiple times?
Yeah, I thought that was kind of a mistake, honestly. If I'm being honest, it was jarring. I feel like maybe the first season, what they should have done was maybe do the young actors. You know what I mean? Just do the young actors and get their performances
completely
down, and get those characters, and then kind of like as the finale, then you move into the next section. I think maybe they even rushed a little bit too much, just because, you know, I mean, it was jarring. There were times, there were a couple of episodes where I had to, after the episode was over, I had to look it up and say, all right, what was the time frame on this? Because it wasn't easily understandable. And I think, honestly, the first 2 or 3 episodes, because I'm big on when I'm watching a show, I don't want to read too much about it. I kind of want to just enjoy it and we'll see what happens. But it took me like the first 2 or 3 episodes before I had actually looked into it to see, okay, I'm not crazy, right? They jump time. Like they skip many years here. I'm not just an idiot. And I didn't realize they were doing that at first. And I don't think they did a very good job of explaining what they were doing. They would make mention in the show, but it was all very, very brief and subtle. And I feel like, okay, I mean, I'm pretty observant as a viewer. And if it took me a little bit to catch on to that, imagine like very casual viewers, they really probably, struggle with it. And then you go online and you'd see that people were really kind of irritated. They didn't understand why why is this happening? Why is his skin falling off? Why is this king just falling apart? I don't understand. It's been like 5 minutes. What happened to him? And it's because of the time jumps.
Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of them shifting through time as much as they do. I mean, we're going through a couple decades in a matter of a few episodes, essentially. I mean, your third episode, you're jumping 2 to 3 years alone. And
then they go 10. So it's like, it's like 15 years or something. Yeah.
Yeah. And for me, I really struggled with disconnecting from the characters, the actors, and getting associated with the new ones. And that I think is really the problem that they faced with this decision, is that you're getting us to not just buy into the character, you're getting us to buy into the actors. And when you dismantle that, you're going to affect our investment in the show and our connection to everything. And now these characters don't feel like the same characters anymore. And it doesn't help that they did this multiple times, that we went through these time jumps so often. I really wish, like you, we would have had more opportunity to kind of flesh out some of those younger stories. But at the same time, I wonder, would they have had enough content to begin with? So maybe there was just a better way to introduce the younger stories than give us half a season of investment with them.
I almost wish they would have, because the actresses are fairly young already. I wish they would have just gone with Olivia Cooke and Emma Darcy. I wish they would have just went with them from the get-go to a degree, because then I think it's a smoother transition, because a lot of the other actors kind of stayed the same, even though they aged up. Like Matt Smith, apparently Damon doesn't age in this show.
He's a vampire.
Yeah, apparently Viserys is just like falling off limb from limb, and he's losing eyes when nobody's looking. I mean, this guy's just falling apart like crazy. And Damon's just like, it's been 3 hours. What are you talking about? I just got out of the bath. You know, so I think it was a little daunting. Plus, to have the two main characters be recast midway through the first season is a bit daunting. I think they got lucky with Alicent, because I think both actresses, Emily Carey and Olivia Cooke, did really, really well in terms of playing it very, very similar. But I feel like Millie Alcock and Emma Darcy, who play Rhaenyra, they kind of play the character way different. Now, that can be attributed to, some maturation. That can be attributed to just general growing older. On the same token, it was a noticeable difference where I don't think Alicent was a major difference in terms of who the character was. It wasn't as daunting as a task to follow their transition to the next age with her character.
Yeah, I would agree. More than anything, this show is about multi-generational trauma, and that's why they're trying to introduce all of these different characters at different stages in their lives, and also primarily dismantling the patriarchy. This rebellion, the concept that one could not be elected as the queen and another could be named as such. Mm-hmm. And so how do you feel about these concepts? Are they becoming exhausting for you? Because it is very feminine, and it a lot of talk about like trauma and the way this affects people, and kind of even parents putting trauma onto their children and how that affects the family dynamics going forward. And we've seen that a lot in entertainment in general. So are you exhausted by these concepts, or do you feel like they did a good job of bringing them to light while also making it entertaining?
Yeah, I need more dude shows, man. No, look, this is unfortunately still very true in a lot of political climates, right? Where, yes, females can ascend more than they ever have, but it still seems like certain factions are out of limits, like the presidency. But on the same token, we had a queen in England for feels like my whole life. Well, it was my whole life. But those things still exist. And they definitely, in history, which Martin's works are very rooted in actual history, which is funny because it's about freaking dragons and stuff. It's very accurate. And I feel like this is exactly what would have happened in that time frame, because so many of the people don't want to bow to a woman. It also kind of shows progress, right? Because Cersei was queen and everybody was all good with it.
That is true. I actually didn't even think about that.
So there's a plus there. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I'm not trying to cut you off because you're a woman. I'm cutting you off because I wasn't done.
This is my time now. I'm a woman. I demand my space.
I think this is kind of an important conversation to have. And I don't think it's more than anything. I just think it's part of this natural. You could have had this same setup work with two guys, right? Because they want the other king, the other boy to be king or something like that, as opposed to the one that they were getting. Something along those lines. You could have worked it out there. I like this because, one, it shows a king who's a progressive thinker, and he's not going to back down from what he committed to. He made a pledge. I respect the honor in that, and we need people of honor and high court in Game of Thrones. Otherwise, it just becomes who's going to kill who next, and it really has no depth to it. So I really like that, and it feels like this is what would happen. Like, it feels like this is what people like Hightower would react. They would have plans in place to completely subvert whatever the king wanted because they want what they want. They want a guy to lead. Nobody's going to bow to a woman in this time frame. Nobody's going to do that. And I feel like that's the truth to it. And I don't feel like it's a bad thing because that's politics. Politics are shady all over the world, not just here. And people do shady things. They would have done something shady no matter who was going to be king, because people always want that power.
Yeah, this feels like the unfortunate truth that even in our present year, 2022, that women breaking the glass ceiling is still a thing. That women in high-ranking positions are still essentially asked or have been attempted to get out of their positions or to not speak or to keep their thoughts to themselves and things like that. And this is an example of not just that, in my opinion, it's also about showing the challenge for someone who's young in rising to a position. And that's something that I personally connected with, where I'm like, hey, I was always that person where I was constantly underestimated because of my gender, because of my age, because of whatever. And here is this princess, somebody who is at the top of the top in the Seven Kingdoms, and she's also facing something like that. And it gives those of us who can connect to that story something to strive for, something that gives us a little bit of hope, regardless of how things turn out. And so I really appreciated that they make this comeuppance the equivalent of war, because sometimes it really does feel that way. And they also do that in a parallel with her and any other birth scenes, where they're comparing and doing a parallel of being a woman is pretty damn hard, and it's like going to war a lot.
I know that the glass ceiling is always being broken. On the same token, it was only 100 years ago, a little over 100 years ago, that women got the right to vote. So, I mean, it's insane in our lifetime to think of that, like that was a thing, but it wasn't that long ago, so there's still a lot of ceilings to break, and there's still a lot of mindsets to change. And just think of how that would be in this era, where they're trying to completely, the king is essentially trying to say, you know what, I'm going to rip it off like a Band-Aid. We're going to be done with this hierarchy. It's going to be who I determine to replace me. And meanwhile, Damon's over there pissed because he's like, this should have been me. The whole time it should have been me.
Yeah, that part sucks for him. Well, let's get into the characters, and we can chat about any casting if it comes up in conversation. First and foremost, Rhaenyra Targaryen. From a young princess to queen, Rhaenyra's plight to successor is one of perseverance, rebellion, and justice. She goes through a couple flings and a marriage to Laenor Velaryon before she and Daemon reunite and grow the family beyond her bastard children with Mr. Strong. How do you feel about her character's trajectory, and more specifically, her decisions to have bastard children but claim them as true Targaryens?
She's got cojones, I will tell you that. My God. That was a bold choice. I do, by the way, I love every time Aegon makes a strong joke. I think it makes me laugh every single time. I think that's bold. It's kind of insulting to her father, who really, really stuck his neck out for her by naming her queen, and then, allowing that to happen because it was kind of very flippant. I just thought it was very flippant and very cold based on her, because this is a time of and a place of stature. It's all about your place in life, your appointment, if you will, in the world. And she's been given a golden opportunity and like many young people, squanders it and wastes it and insults her parents by making some bad choices. Now, does she owe her dad to give offspring that match the Targaryen name? No, she doesn't owe him anything. She's allowed to live her life however she wants. But it is an insult to him, and it is an obvious slap in the face that everyone is aware of, and how he is completely oblivious to it blows my mind.
Oh, he knows. He knows. I think he knows.
I think he's in denial, though. I think he's doing everything in his power to deny it because he won't have that be said about his beloved daughter. And I would agree. As a father, I get that. You can push out the worst things your kids do because you don't want to see it. You don't want to picture that. But in terms of her trajectory, I've really loved watching her character grow and show how smart she is, how patient she is trying to be, but also she's not a coward. She doesn't back down. She's not just, she could have at the end of the season just taken the offer and they're done. They don't have to worry about this anymore. Their kids can enjoy their lives. They still get to rule in, Driftmark or Driftwood or Driftmark, whatever it is.
Driftmark.
Thank you. They get to rule there and, they would still have quite the life. But instead, she chooses to enforce what her father wanted. And that's her right. And she's completely in the right to want that. And she's not going to be pushed down because of some sons of bitches that decide that it should be a man up there. And also, she did that right after she lost her baby. This is a tough ass woman right here. I'd be scared if I lived in King's Landing because I've seen what happens when women get mad there.
When Targaryen women in particular get mad there.
Targaryen women that happens to own a dragon, very bad things happen.
So one thing that I would say is that I don't, and we'll talk more about Viserys in a little bit, but I don't feel like he doesn't know. I think he knows. But the problem is if he says, yes, those are bastard children, or he allows anyone to continue that, he loses all ability to have his grandchildren have heir to the throne because they have to be blood relatives. We know that bastard children from Game of Thrones are not given they don't have the same power, and they're not respected, and more than anything, they don't have a true claim to the throne. And so I think this is Viserys's way of, I'm going to deny it and deny it and deny it because Rhaenyra is my daughter. She is 100% my daughter. I love my daughter, and I want my family to continue. And if those are her kids, those are still her kids, even if they're not, 100% blood.
They are still Targaryen. I mean, they're her kids.
They are.
So they're still. Yeah. That is one thing that kind of boggled my mind. I'm like, okay, you can make the case that they also have some strong blood. They have strong blood. But they also have that Targaryen blood. I mean, they're her kids. She is a Targaryen, so it counts no matter what. But they want that pure blood, I guess.
Mm-hmm. She's a super strong woman and young girl throughout the entirety of the season. Mm-hmm. But the one thing that I would say that I took away from this show in terms of her plight is I think that the moment with Daemon was really a turning point for her. She didn't see it as abuse.
Where he chokes her?
Now, no. In the beginning where they have their little sexual fling. You have to keep in mind she's a very young girl at that time. And I don't think that, sure, it's more accepting for incestual things to happen, but for her to be such a young girl, that takes a toll on you. And I think for her, because of that situation and not recognizing it as abuse, a lot of times abuse victims go out and they become increasingly sexual and they have a higher, those are the ones who get called whores and sluts, right?
Oh, I gotcha. Yeah.
And so for her, I think it was A, about being rebellious and having control of her life, but B, I think that really unlocked something in her. And obviously it slows down later on in life because she's able to kind of have a turning point over who she is. And it's not the same as when she's younger, but those decisions are already made at that point. You know, there's nothing more that she can do to reverse the course of those decisions. But she is so smart and intentional, but she has a lot of compassion because she did not have to, her and Daemon both did not have to give Laenor the opportunity to run away with his mister.
Mm-hmm. I love that, by the way. That was a really cool twist.
It was really cool. And she was so smart about it because it was compassion, but it was also, I know that people are going to fear me because the rumor mill is going to set us up for people to get scared of us. And that is, I think, just so smart of her to manipulate in that way. And unfortunately, that's politics is manipulating, really, being able to get people to see your side or see it the way you want it seen.
Mm-hmm.
And by the end of the show, or the season, she shows us that a woman in control does not have to be angry and emotional to get things done. And even though that's kind of the phrases that are turned out pretty quickly whenever you talk about any woman in any position of power, she's the only one who's not acting with emotion. She's the only one who is being patient and trying to find the best solution for the situation and thinking before reacting. And I love that so goddamn hard. I love it.
Well, do you still love it even after they mama beared her and she's going to end up being crazy when the season opens for season 2?
Yeah, I see. There's a turning point when you're a parent and somebody kills your kid. That's
it's okay
a turning
then.
point.
All right, I gotcha.
Then I think any man, woman, person would go crazy. Would you agree? You're a parent. You'd probably go crazy.
There would be some asses, debts to be paid. Debts to be paid.
Some debts to be paid.
Yeah.
I love that. This is not going to be played
I'll be
in court.
perfectly honest. I would have killed Hightower right on the spot when he showed up at the end in the finale.
Ooh, I would have loved that.
It would have been right there. I would have sent him back
die.
as a corpse, a burnt-ass corpse.
Well, let's talk about the king himself, Viserys Targaryen. A father, a king, and a husband, probably in that order. He meets his fate after years of battling the disease of leprosy. He was most devoted to Rhaenyra and sought to protect his daughter at all costs. He is a true one. Inevitably choosing his heir, Viserys never didn't experience consequences for his decisions. How do you feel about him as a king and a father?
Well, first, shout out to Paddy Considine, because, my God, what a performance. That last episode he was alive in was... barely alive in, was just acting at its finest. I thought he better be nominated for an Emmy. Anyway, I admired him, especially in a show that gives you so few people to admire, which is funny. I feel like in this show, we have so many more people to get behind than we did in Game of Thrones at any given point. I don't know why I feel that way, but I feel that way. And it's probably,
I think everyone is equally not good and equally not bad.
Yeah, they're human, right? They feel more human, where I feel like Game of Thrones, especially as the show went on, it got more and more, well, I don't trust any of these bitches. They're all going to screw somebody over. But Viserys seems like, for the first time, we have a good and decent king. We have who Ned Stark probably would have been if he was king. You know what I mean? We have that good, decent man who is ruling over a kingdom and also trying to set up the kingdom for the future and make it more welcoming to everyone, including women. He just, and you know, he admits his faults. That never happens with rulers and dictators and people who are in charge. They don't want to admit they ever made a mistake. And he is more than willing to admit and be open to, I made a mistake. I overlooked you. I shouldn't have. I really misjudged you and was short-sighted. I'm going to give you the keys to the castle. And I trust you so much. Here's this secret of the Song of Ice and Fire. Something I didn't even tell Daemon, who was the supposedly the next successor.
I love that you mentioned that.
Oh my God.
Ooh, with his face when he heard that.
Yeah, that's why he grabs her by the throat. It isn't. I think people think it's just he's mad that she's being cross. I think he's angry and he's reacting because he's never heard this before, which meant his brother never trusted him with it.
And we as the audience know that moment to be so significant because when Viserys tells Rhaenyra about it, he says, "This is passed from king to heir."
Mm-hmm.
It is always the secret shared between these two. And he told her this long ago. If he had ever considered Daemon to be his successor, he would have shared this, and he never did. And Daemon realizes no matter what he did to try to impress his brother, Viserys was never going to see him as a potential king, ever.
Yep.
Probably rightfully so.
Probably. I mean, I think he's very mad that they married because I just feel like he knows Daemon is dangerous to have on that throne. It's painfully obvious. Yeah. He is quick to burn everything down. I think you learned that in the first episode. Just people like him so much, they stop remembering that. I mean, he was basically just torturing civilians for minor crimes to get the point across. He has no problem burning the whole world down to get his way. That's why it's so fun to watch. Oh my God. But back to
Viserys.
But back to Viserys. He's the king. He's the ruler you want. He's the president you want. He's the king you want. He's the whatever country you live in. He's the person in charge you want. You want that kind of heart, a compassionate, empathetic, reasonable, and with the ability to change their mind, to learn from their own flaws, to evolve, to actually grieve those that have been lost and care about those that will be lost. He's like a perfect ruler, which meant I'm surprised no one ever murdered him.
Yeah, I thought that it was going to get to that, especially after he named Rhaenyra and then continued to not change that when Aegon was born. I really, really expected someone to try to just take him out, but I think they saw him as he was a peacekeeper. He was keeping everything united and together, and that's what he wanted from his daughter as queen, is to continue that. And unfortunately, no matter what, her being rightfully named or it being usurped from her, there was going to be divide. And he knew that, but he also knew that this was the best person for the job, if so to say. The thing I really struggle with his character, though, is he's perfect in so many ways, except for his nepotism. Like the moment, and it's probably one of my favorite moments of the whole season, but I really, logically, I struggle with it because I know that's kind of messed up. However, when he is on his deathbed and he basically crawls to the Iron Throne to be able to sit down and say, "This is what's going to happen. Sorry, Vaemond, you're not going to rule. You're not going to have Driftmark, and that's just how it is. And also, if anybody says anything about my daughter and her bastard children, I'm going to cut your tongue out." And the moment he literally is crawling, basically, to be there and support his daughter, which is what she asked for. And as a father, as a parent, that is probably the most impactful moment that he will ever share with his daughter. But as a king, it is a very flawed decision.
Yeah, it is.
It is very flawed because there could have been a conversation where it doesn't matter where they come from. They're still my grandchildren. They still are descendants of mine and have a rightful heir. They're rightful heirs or whatever. I don't know. But instead, he is willing to harm anybody who speaks the truth. And that's a concern. That's problematic.
Well, he should have harmed Alicent. That's who he should have harmed. Because as soon as she drew blood, I would have put her out. I'm like, no, you're not my wife anymore. You just harmed my kid. You're out. That's not how we roll.
Truly.
Not how we roll here in the Shire. Sorry.
Well, let's talk about Daemon, because there's probably not much left to say about him. We both like him. He's problematic, but despite his desire to win Viserys' approval at every step, he fell short in his brother's eyes. Daemon is manipulative, he's sacrificial, but yet he's still a loyal Targaryen. By the end of the show, by the end of the season, he's still by Rhaenyra's side.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I have to say I'm impressed with his ability to remain loyal. And when he steps up for her in her name as queen, obviously I feel like there are ulterior motives. This puts him as king consort.
Mm-hmm.
But it still is like, it feels like he's doing it because it's in his heart. Or maybe that's what I'm hoping for.
That feels more like hope. I feel like there is a point to be made where sometimes when I've talked to people about this and they're like, Daemon, and I get it, man. I'm all Daemon. Hands in. Don't make him king, but I love Daemon.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like people are missing some of the important parts because he's very charismatic and he's very unwordy, which is that makes him even more mischievous in my eyes. I'm like, I don't trust anybody that never says anything. That's a little finger move. He's surveying the room. He's surveying the pieces in the room. And I still feel like he's playing her to a degree. That this is his best effort to get to that throne. Because if he gets to the throne and then she's dead, he gets the throne. Even though I know the son would be the next. But because he's technically from Viserys' bloodline, I feel like there would be a loophole where he could seize power that way. And
he would try to,
yes, for sure. It would be the same kind of thing where there's machinations in place. So I do not trust Daemon as far as I can throw him. Even though I think he has true feelings for Rhaenyra, I still think he loves power more and he wants to burn some shit down.
God, the things he will do to exact revenge and piss other people off. He is a professional at pissing other people off. And that's something I love about him. But I agree with you. He is also would be so dangerous as king because he is unrelenting and his desire for revenge is more important to him than any sort of peace or compromise. And the things he's done, he killed his own wife. He had no problem bashing her head in because she called him some slander names.
Yeah, but I did love that he killed Corlys's brother, right?
Vaemon?
Yeah.
When he slices his head?
That was pretty badass, where he's just like,
it was.
My bad.
He can keep his tongue. I was like, oh!
Such a good move. Such a good move.
Yeah.
Daemon, I think, is definitely the favorite from across the board.
For sure. Let's talk about Princess Rhaenys Targaryen. She begins as one that's hard to root for, ends up being second only to one in King's Landing with no tolerance for a coup. Not on her watch. She begins her story as the woman who would never be queen and fought for her true right. And even though she didn't win, she still fought for a woman she hated for most of the season. I really did hate Rhaenys in the beginning.
Why do you hate her? I get why she was bitter.
I get it too, but I feel like she was taking it out on Rhaenyra for no reason when instead she could have just supported her in the beginning. She was bitter that she was given an opportunity that her own family had not given to her, but that's not something that Rhaenyra can control. And I felt like she was taking it out on the wrong person. By the end, I think she rights those wrongs and she realizes Rhaenyra is the one who is patient and calm and trying to keep things united. And that's why she tries to encourage Lord Corlys to support her as queen. But even that moment when she busts her big ass dragon from the dragon pit when they're naming Aegon.
Yeah.
The beast beneath the boards. And she comes up, she had an opportunity to kill and end all of it. And as we find out in the next episode, she chose not to do that because she said, this is not my war to fight. I'm not here for that.
War to start.
And
it's not my war to start.
War to start.
Yeah.
War to start.
Yeah.
She's willing to fight in it. You're right. And the thing I love about that is, she is a fighter. She's willing to stand up for what's right and what's wrong. And she has her moral compass. But she also took her emotions out of it. She could have continued to be a bitter Betty. Betty, that's the one I was thinking of. A bitter Betty, but instead she chose to do the right thing. And that takes a lot, I feel like, to support and help someone that you've despised for so long, for decades, and give them support for something that you'll never get that you wanted for so long.
Yeah, there's a couple of things I take away from her character. One, I admire that she didn't burn everybody, even though it would have made the series a lot quicker. Would have ended it right there, I think. I mean, no more.
Yeah,
there would actually
short season.
No war. That would be peace among the kingdoms, really. It would be very, very quick. So to a degree, I think she made a mistake there. But, that's her mistake to make. On the same token, in that scene, I got an appreciation for Allison. I was empathetic for Allison because you saw what was most important to her when she put herself in front of her son. She wasted no time. There was no doubt in her mind that her kids are the most important thing. But when is it Rhaenys? Is that how you pronounce her name? Rhaenys? I always say it wrong. Rhaenys. When she is talking to Rhaenyra and she's giving her support, I'm still the only thing I'm really irritated by is that Rhaenyra didn't pull her aside and have a mom-to-mom chat. Once she knew that she was on board with her, regardless of where it went, that's where she should have pulled her aside and said, look, I know you still think, because I would have in the back of my mind, I need to make sure this woman trusts me. I know what you think, that I killed your son or I played a part in it. He is alive. I know she told her that she had no part in his death. I would tell her he is alive. This is why he left, because I think she would understand. I firmly believe, based on everything we have seen from her, that she would totally understand. And by her not doing that, I think it's going to bite her in the ass at some point. Because remember what you already said, if you killed my kid, wouldn't you burn the world down? She's still got that in her mind, and that hasn't left.
That's true. And
all it will take is a little twist of a knife in some direction, and she will be happy to stab Rhaenyra.
And also, it's in her best interest for her and her family, her children who are betrothed to Rhaenyra's children, for her to be queen. And then, if she got rid of her, she got rid of her. And then, then her child would become queen consort. I think you have a really good point there. I don't know that it's at that point yet. And I don't know that Rhaenyra trusts her enough to not uproot everything to try to find her kid. It might distract her too much when she needs her mind in the war right now. But I think you're right that she's making things more challenging by having a potential still enemy on her side, but behind her back.
Yep, exactly. I think you're shooting yourself in the foot on this one. And the sea snake's right there too. And he's gonna, he definitely feels the same. He stated it. That's why it was an important moment, because they made sure to state it in the episode. And I feel like, it's gonna come back and bite her in the ass if she doesn't address this to some degree. She needs to address it. And keep in mind, her husband also killed his brother. So find some good graces here.
That's true.
Find some good graces, or it's going to bite you in the ass.
So let's talk about Lucerys, a.k.a. Luke Targaryen, the second born child of Rhaenyra and Laenor Velaryon. More so, actually, Harwin Strong's child. But we won't talk about that, just as Rhaenyra doesn't talk about it. He meets his fate when Aemon's plan for an eye revenge goes awry. This was really sad.
His fault. Oh, totally his fault. You're a stupid kid. As soon as you showed up, I'm sorry, I'm not trying.
He is a kid, though. Let's remember that.
He's a dumbass. He shows up and he sees a dragon that's 10 times his dragon size. He knows whose dragon that is. Get the frack out of there. Haul ass, man. Do not stay in there for 1 second longer. You do not need to. I'm just a messenger. I'm not here for it. Doesn't matter. You know this dude's psycho and you took his eye. Get the hell out. That's on him. Dumb shit. Sorry, continue.
Definitely naive. And I think that was what Rhaenyra was so afraid of, is not only are her children becoming adult men in this war, but she's sending a very naive child out to do some royal business in a very dangerous world where a lot of people are out to get them.
Yeah.
And
that was a mistake.
You saw
on her
that
part.
in those moments.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Jacaerys, there was a little bit more. I think he's older, he's more mature, he has more of an understanding of how to handle some of those situations. But I have to give a lot of credit to Luke because in all reality, he could have fought, he could have not stood his ground and said, I'm not here to be a warrior, I'm here to be a messenger, as his queen said. But the naivety is shown and foreshadowed when he's talking with his mother, and he calls her mother rather than queen because he's not in this world yet. And so I think we all knew that his fate was sealed when he rode off on his dragon. And it's just really sad. But damn, Aemon, his reaction in that moment was like, fuck, God damn it. I just messed everything up. My mom's going to be so mad at me.
My mom's going to be so... It's Stu from Scream. My mom is going to be so mad at me.
So mad at me.
Yeah, that was... wow. That was a fantastic scene, by the way. That whole dragon fight. And you see the whole Jaws shot underneath
Oh, that was so
dragon,
cool.
where his dragon's a little tiny. I mean, it's almost like, oh, so cute. And meanwhile, you've got Aemon's big-ass freaking Jaws shadow going underneath them, and it's like, you dumbass, get out of there. You should have stayed down in those caverns for a long time is what he should have done, because that dragon never could have got down there, and he should have known better. But wow. And then they're both thinking they can control their dragons, and it looks like, tell me if you see it this way, it looks very much like Sirius's dragon and Luke's dragon was trying to basically defend itself against Aemon's dragon, and that's why Aemon's dragon went and ate him, right? That's how it seemed to you. It didn't seem like...
Yeah. Because
I guess some people are saying in the book, and I don't really give a shit about the book because I'm not reading them. I don't care. It's what I see on TV. I'm all done with the Game of Thrones book reader thing, where I know what's coming. I don't care. I'm going to watch and see how it plays out, because obviously, it can change. And they've changed a lot of stuff from the books. But in the book, apparently, it's more straightforward murder, the way that I'm understanding it. But here,
that's what I've heard too.
Yeah, but that's not what we saw, so it doesn't matter here. It doesn't count.
Mm-hmm.
Here, it was definitely an accident. Or not so much an accident, but an unwanted result from bullying.
Yeah, which is ironic because Aemon was bullied himself by his siblings.
Sure, absolutely. Well, that's what happens a lot of times with bullies, is they become bullies. You either... you learn from it and grow from it, or you expound on it. And that's what he's done. He's become worse than anything he experienced. That's pretty typical.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
But
it's just really sad fate for this kid.
It was a sad fate, but man, it was badass, wasn't it? I mean,
it was badass. It was a really cool sequence.
Dragon chomping action. That was great.
Well, and honestly, could you have had a whole season of a show that's a spinoff of Game of Thrones without having a dragon battle? Come on.
Well, yeah, I think it took several seasons before we ever got one. But my God, now, yeah, you gotta... It's called The Dance of the Dragons is the book it's based on. I want to see some dragons dancing, and that's what it's looking like. Plus, we got to see another Mamba Jamba dragon. And we've heard about other dragons that are even bigger than that one. So, I mean, I'm looking forward to what comes next. It also shows that dragons aren't as controllable as we've been led to believe in this show.
Yeah, that's an interesting part, too, because the thing that Daemon really keeps going back to is we're Targaryens. We have dragons. We rule dragons. We're the rulers of dragons. And it's really quite opposite. It's really... dragons are tolerating you, and you have the ability to control them if you have a
Mm-hmm.
good relationship with them. But I don't feel like, Aemon pretty much stole that dragon. To be able to have Vhagar, which is the biggest dragon in Westeros, I don't think he fully understood what was happening. And also, when a dragon is attacked, don't you think it's going to want to defend itself? And so these two going back and forth is just, you're going to have a bad outcome. You can't sit there and say, no, listen to me. You don't have that bond yet. You're still young. I mean, think about it as even if it were dogs, you can't control that situation. You know that there's a potential for a bad outcome, and that's unfortunately what happens. But I love the moment on Rhaenyra's face. I love Daemon's soft compassion to telling her, and I love her face when she turns around. She has her moment of like gut-wrenching grief in a way she's never experienced grief before, despite losing an unborn child, her father, all of these people. She's never known this type of grief. And she gets her shit together and she turns around and man, the look on her face. She is ready for war.
That was so good. So good. Yeah. It's a brutal death. But again, as soon as she lets them go off on their own, you're like, oh, well, I know he's going to bite it. Because the other kid's pretty strong. I think he'll be fine. Plus, as soon as, well, it's only a short flight away. You'll be fine. I'm like, oh, he's dead. He's so dead. Like, this is just, he's going to go so horribly. I didn't think it would be by a dragon chomping. I thought it would be as soon as I saw Aemon
dude, and
there.
the little pieces of the dragon that were flipping down through the clouds.
God. That was so sad.
That was brutal
so
and sad. But speaking of the other sibling that's notable, the oldest next in line to be heir of the Iron Throne, Jacaerys Targaryen. He is the eldest of Queen Rhaenyra's children. And he's been a little bit more, I feel like, sheltered off screen, more so than most of the children that are supposed to be prominent to us. But I really appreciate that they've set his character up to be very, I'll do it, I'll take care of it, just very forward, willing to do things, willing to stand up and say, I will do this. In the moment when they're trying to figure out what to do about things, he's smart and he says, no, hold on a second. Let's not send this by a raven. Dragons are faster and they're scarier. Let us do it. And I think he was prepared for that. I don't think that Lucerys was prepared for it, but I do think Jacaerys was prepared for that moment and to be a rider on a dragon. But honestly, we have yet to see the full outcome.
Yeah, we do. But we did see Jacaerys go up against Daemon too, which was quite interesting. And also you got to see Daemon once again be badass and be like, look, bitch, I understand who you are. You're not going to tell me who's in charge. You know, he just doesn't give a rat's ass. But he's not stupid enough to insult him outright and get himself killed. But he's smart enough and forthright enough to be like, don't talk down to me. I'm not going to listen to this shit.
It was also, I kind of felt bad for him for Jacaerys, because he's trying to do the right thing and say, this is what the word of the queen is. But Daemon is so damn smart and he just turns around and he repeats to those around the table and says, oh, this is what you're going to do. And they're like, all right, this is what we're going to do.
Total stepdad move. That's a kid coming in like, you're not going to talk to my mom that way. I just did. Smack.
What you going to do about it?
Yeah. Step up. Let's go, boy. Step up. That's what he's doing. He's making that. It's basically a stepdad move. Step up. Let's go. All right. Exactly. That's what I thought.
Speaking of some bold folks that come across in House of the Dragon, Alicent Hightower. She begins her reign of terror mostly as an innocent bystander before her father pushes her into this royal standing, destroying her friendship or flirtationship with Rhaenyra. She goes on to mother children with Viserys, sells feet pics for information to Larys, Lord of Harrenhal, and usurps the throne from Rhaenyra for her son Aegon. I don't feel like it's intentional. I really feel like she just misheard or misunderstood his last words. But the way she's handled it has really pissed me off.
Viserys' words? Yeah, I mean...
Yeah.
Honestly, I kind of wish they wouldn't have thrown that in there, but I guess they did that so you could still have some empathy with Alicent.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
Yeah, that felt very writery. Which is, we're going to make her hear, but nobody else heard it. Because I don't think it would have changed any of the events that happened if she hadn't heard that. It just would have changed her belief in it. Because they still had these plans in place. They were going forward with them. Whether she wanted them to or not, I don't think it mattered. I am not on the same board as you are. Because, I mean, just by the way you wrote that, her reign of terror, da-da-da-da. I am very I am very empathetic.
I don't like her.
No, you don't like her. I am very empathetic to Alicent. I don't feel like she has done anything necessarily wrong. I feel like she very much respects the position that she's in. She believes in duty and honor, just like Rhaenyra does, but she takes it more seriously. I mean, she basically hooked up with the king because her daddy wanted her to. She's become the queen, and she's bore the children like she was expected to. She took care of him till his dying day. She took care of Viserys till his dying day.
I give her a lot of credit for
Doesn't
being
sound like
it.
Reign of Terror. I'm just going to go back to that. Reign of Terror.
She has intentionally gone behind his back, though, and like conspired with Otto, even without fully realizing it. But even with Larys, like, she knows what she's doing. And I understand that she's trying to secure her place, but making her son she wanted to do that the whole time. She did not want Rhaenyra to have it after Rhaenyra pissed her off. And honestly, because she lied to her. And I feel like it's all a revenge plot. Like, screw this mean person who hurt my feelings and who did wrongdoing and got my dad sent out of here, even though he was doing conspiring against the king and being a shitty hand. She feels entitled to all of this, and that's what bothers me about her.
I don't know if I agree with that she feels entitled. I feel like she firmly believes this is what's right for the throne. I think she believes that. In fact, I have little doubt that she believes that. I really truly believe that's what she thinks.
But even after finding out information that Aegon is not all that he's cracked up to be, she made this girl who was raped just take birth control and was like, "Oh, hush, hush now. Call it a day."
That's a queen. That's a mother protecting her son move. That's a mother
fucked up move.
I didn't say it was good.
I'm just saying. You said she didn't do anything wrong. This is a wrong move. This was really messed up of her.
Well, but on the same token, Rhaenyra's made some bad moves too. I mean, she had kids out of wedlock, knowing it's going to completely insult her entire family name. That it's going to cause bad blood for her family. She did it anyway.
That didn't. Look, they already have enough bad blood to their name because he was naming a woman, and she had no problem going against what some people in the realm felt was appropriate or not. And I'm not excusing her having
a little bit
extramarital affairs, but she had an open relationship agreement. It's not like she was cheating on her husband. He agreed to it.
They got an upside down pineapple outside the door. That's their business. I don't care about that. But I am just saying, Alicent, if you can defend a lot of Rhaenyra's actions, I think you should be able to defend Alicent, or at least empathize to some degree that she's not Cersei. I don't believe that at all.
She's not Cersei. I don't feel like she's Cersei either. I agree with you. But I do not. I have some empathy for her because she was put into a position that she did not want. She did not want to marry this old dude.
She didn't want the Strongs to get killed.
With him.
She didn't want the Strongs to get killed.
She didn't want those things to happen. You're right. But I also feel like her festering about what her dad's words, I feel like really more than anything have gotten into her head.
Sure.
And now she feels like she has to find security for her and her family at any cost. And even if that means doing things that are very opposite of truth and justice and morality and all of the things that she's so gung-ho about being and having a claim to, she is doing the opposite of. She is no longer that innocent woman who does everything according to the laws and the rules. She's not. She's not an innocent person anymore. And I think that's part of what bothers me, is that she tries to act like she's this innocent woman, but she's really not. The biggest moment of empathy I had for her, or I had like a rooting moment for her, was when she came out in that green dress. She said, "You guys want to lie to me? I'm going to show you who my loyalty really belongs to."
Badass.
And it's the Hightowers.
That was badass. I love that moment. I thought she's like, I'm done being talked down to. You know, I'm just
and
done.
She didn't even have to say anything. She just walked in her dress. She had this was a very, very beautiful moment for her character. And I really give a lot of credit to Emily Carey because she was such a quaint character until this moment, and her head was so high and proud, and the way she looked at Rhaenyra when she said, "Congratulations, stepdaughter," and I was like, "Ooh, the shade. You go, girl." Like, she's telling you, I know what's going on behind my back, and you and your dad can do whatever you want, but I know the truth. And if you're gonna do this, then I'm gonna stand with my family. Screw your family.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I get it. It was I have become somewhat empathetic. I think she's made some questionable choices. She's working those feet for information. That's kind of interesting. I mean, she knows the guy's like touching himself over there, right? That was just a weird.
Okay,
choice.
I believe that she knew because
she knew.
She took off her. Okay,
yes,
there
100%.
are some people who don't think that she knew.
Those
that
people are not paying attention to this show at all because it's painfully obvious she's well aware of what she's doing. He'll give the information and he'll do what she wants as long as you take some stockings off. This dude is basically like Quentin Tarantino if he was in the medieval times.
Literally 100%. And this is where I feel the most empathy for Alicent is she is so alone that she has had to rely on Mr. Humpback of Notre Dame to give her information so she can feel like she's, I don't know, included, like she has information that a queen should have.
Yeah, that's true.
That she has some sort of power. And she has to do it by selling feet pics. And I feel really bad for her because even though he's not physically touching her, it's a form of assault still. You know?
She's doing it willingly.
It's really messed up.
No, she's doing it willingly. I mean, she's totally like, this little piggy went to market. Give it to me. I mean, so she's working
went
in
all the way home.
But this is she's had to degrade herself to get information. Where Cersei, hundreds of years later, just beckons to her servants to go talk to the little birds. You know what I mean? She doesn't have that access, and it's disappointing. Disappointing. So she's trying to.
And that's where I feel a lot of empathy for her. She's very alone, and she's alone because. Well, Otto has his own faults. He chose what he chose, but partly because of the lies between Rhaenyra and Viserys.
Right. Yeah.
But let's talk about Otto.
Oh,
Otto
no,
is...
this dick. Jesus.
Okay, this bitch, you fired. You are fired. Hand of the King, removed from his post when King Viserys learns that Otto has been masterminding a plan to remove Rhaenyra as heir. And of course, he finds his way back.
That's on Viserys.
I hate this man.
That's on Viserys. That's the worst move he made in the entire series.
Removing? You're talking about removing him?
No, bringing him back.
Bringing him back.
Bringing him back. As soon as, he knew he wasn't loyal before. Don't chance it again. I don't care who his wife is. But his wife is very supportive and he had faith in her. And yeah, that's what happens.
Oh, the thing that bothers me about him is not that he's a conniving asshole, but the Hightowers from Alicent they're kind of trying to portray themselves, even Otto, as being faithful to the laws of the land and like how things are done and we're doing things right. But his number one priority was supposed to be protecting the king and serving the king. And he fell very short on that. He did everything he could. I mean, he was having Rhaenyra stalked to try to find some sort of information he could use to get her out. And that's what he was trying to do. He is the one who started the rumor. Mm-hmm. Mind you, I think we should point out, because some people didn't know this, that rumor, where he got that information, the White Worm, that was Daemon's little side chick that he had for a while.
Yeah.
Not Mysterio. I don't remember what her name is.
Mysterio? That would be great if Jake Gyllenhaal showed up.
But that was a fun fact that I guess a lot of people didn't catch, is that White Worm connection. So Otto gets that information from basically like a scorned lover. And he's like, well, I'm going to use this information to my ability. She
also gives a nice little subtle threat. Like, if you do me wrong, it will be the will of the people to take this down. You know, yeah. I mean, she's basically saying the people give you the power that we allow you to have.
Oh, I loved that moment when she meets with him later on.
Mhm.
And they're trying to, the competition to find Aegon ensues. And
That
that's
little
when she
piece of
threatens
shit.
him. And that's such a good moment.
The day that Hightower dies is going to be akin to the Littlefinger death. It's just going to be one where we can all applaud. So I hope they do it
100%.
spectacularly.
I hope it's brutal, and I hope he doesn't see it coming until the moment it happens, and I want to see the realization in his eyes.
I hope his daughter does it.
Ooh, I would love that. I would love that.
That's what I want to see. I want to see her really take ownership of everything. And I hope she does it to I don't know, support her son or something. She does it for her own family reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of Aegon.
Where she finds out what he's been doing, and she's like, oh, I can't have this anymore. Loyalty, justice, all of the right things. Yeah, speaking of Aegon, our emo Gerard Way replica, who black paraded his way to the throne.
Well done. Well done.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I feel really bad for this kid in a lot of ways because he felt so unloved and unwanted by his father. Hold on, let me finish.
We can't give Alicent a second of, oh, poor Alicent, but this kid, we're like, oh.
Seconds. I gave her seconds. I'm just getting this out of the way because I don't like this kid at all. I do feel moments of sorrow for him because his entire life, everyone around him has been saying, no, you should be king. And his dad's like, probably not, actually. And so he feels this disdain almost from his dad. And if it's like that problematic situation when you choose one kid over another. And honestly, he chooses Rhaenyra at every step. That's his number one above everything else.
That is true. There are definitely moments where I'm like, he knows he has other children, right? Like, nobody's kept this from him.
Yeah, it's like he forgets. It's like he's so old he forgets he has other kids.
He's got leprosy, but does that mean his brain fell out? Does he forget shit? I mean...
Did it just fall out? Oh, the poor guy. But anyway, Aegon is falsely named king at the end of the season. He is a terrible person. He has children fighting each other for fun, like in pits. He has little children, little bastard children run around all over the place because he's such a whore, apparently, as they say. And he's just genuinely not a nice kid. Like, he just doesn't care about any of this. He doesn't want any of this until the moment his ego is stroked and that sword goes up in the air and he's like, oh, they're going to cheer for me. The people want me. Then I want this. And it's all about ego. And that's the part that's freaking scary.
It is scary. And also led to one of the best moments in the whole season where that dragon comes up from the boards and like basically is like, you aren't that impressive. And then he's like, oh shit, this king thing is not nearly as cool as I thought. I do not even have a dragon. This sucks.
Pretty much. Yeah. I feel like we didn't get enough screen time with his character either. I don't know if you had that same feeling where...
No, he does have a dragon. They all have dragons, right? Don't they all have dragons?
The only one who didn't have a dragon was Aemon, but he ended up getting a dragon.
That's right. So the joke only works if it makes sense, and it did make sense. So just completely ignore what I said.
Yeah, that's funny. But the thing I really wish we would have got more seeing him be not great. Because we get this moment of exposition where they tell us about how he's been a really not great person, but we don't really get to see that throughout this season. And I think it would have helped make the case even more for us to kind of like unify against him and be like, nah, screw this kid. If we would have seen more of that. And he was really in the shadows for a lot of it.
For Aemond?
For Aegon.
Oh, for Aegon. Okay. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
But for Aemon, our one-eyed, blue steel, Lord of the Rings looking adventurer.
Frickin' love this dude. I love this dude. Love him.
I do love him also. When he claims a dragon, his entire world changes. And he goes from being the bullied to being the bully. He makes a fateful decision, killing another child, one of his... What is it, his cousin or his nephew? It's his nephew.
Yeah.
He actually kills his nephew. And we're kind of left, where is his character going to go from here? But up to this point, you felt sympathy for him in the beginning, and then he turns out to be kind of a real asshole, but a fun one.
I mean, it just proves once again that this is what happens when you bully people. It's bad. Don't do it. This dude is like Biff Tannen if he looked like Snake Plissken, and I freaking love him. I mean, when the kid first tamed the dragon, that's a really cool scene, by the way, where he tames the dragon and he faces his fears, and it's really kind of badass. So it made me respect the character of Aemond. Mm-hmm. But then the next episode, because he ages up 10 years, but it looks like he's 45 years old for some reason. Whatever.
He somehow looks older than Aegon, his older brother.
He really does. Yeah. I guess that's what happens when you're, in My Chemical Romance all the time, just doing concerts. You get to stay young. This poor guy's just suffering riding around dragons, and that ages you. But he looks fantastic. I don't know what it is. It's just the way that this actor carries himself. It's the way that he goes about his mannerisms and how sly and subtle he is. It's very... I mean, there are a lot of people that say he looks a lot like Daemon. I mean, is he really Daemon's kid? And And there's a moment where
he looks like him and he acts like him. Ewan Mitchell is the actor who plays a more adult Daemon.
Good. He is so good, and I feel like he's doing that because when you see that in that moment where he shares screen with Daemon, the Lord Strong joke moment where they're having the wonderful meal that goes horribly south, and. They share a look, and I feel like that was almost a look of admiration, like he looks up to him and who he is, because he very much is
probably
a younger version of him. I mean, he's become a strong manipulator. He's very intelligent. He's very informed. He's a master fighter.
He's an outcast and kind of a black sheep in the family.
Exactly, all of those things. He's got this bitchin' blue eye or whatever. He's just, man, I think he's only been, 3 episodes? I mean, it hasn't been that many that they've actually had the older actor. I love him. I absolutely love him. Like, every time he's been on screen, I have just been enamored with him. Like, he's right up there with Daemon, and he's been in there a third of the time. That's pretty impressive to me.
That's actually a really good point. I hadn't considered, he's only been in 3 episodes, and he really is become... he's a character that I want to watch every moment that he is on. An actor
he's that,
where I want to see what he's going to do.
He's that villain you freaking love. You just love. And even when he realizes, oh shit, I just got my nephew killed. Even that, I think he played just beautifully because he looks really regretful, and he's got the, oh man, I'm going to have to talk to my mom when I get home. I mean, he just has the whole vibe down. Like, he's very much like a bullied kid who became the bully, and he pushed it too far, and it's too late now.
And that's one thing about him that I think they're trying to make him redeemable, because they could have made it where he's like, whatever, and he brushes it off. He shrugs his shoulders and he says, that's what you get. A little bit more than an eye for an eye. But instead, we have this still kid. I mean, all of these children are 17 to 20 age range or so is supposedly. And for that age, I'm just very surprised that he has still some sort of regret in him for what he's doing. Like, he did not mean for it to be that bad. No. And that makes him somewhat redeemable.
So good.
He should have fed his dragon, honestly.
What do you feed a dragon? I mean, I feel like they would eat a lot. So nobody ever addresses that. What are these things eating?
Real quick, we should talk about Helena, just very quickly. Ironic, considering my...
She's a red witch, man. She's a red witch.
She is! This chick knows the future.
Yep. Pay attention to her. Nobody's listening to her. Nobody's listening to her ever. Why?
Seriously. She knows things, my guy. So when we get into season 2... one of the things I'm going to do is pay attention to every goddamn line that she has, because she obviously has tricks up her sleeve.
She knows what's going on. The beast beneath the boards, and then the dragon comes out. Like, it's happened in multiple episodes, and some stuff she said in one where it came true like a couple episodes later. I'm like, oh shit, I need to start paying attention to what she says.
Mm-hmm. Our last character that we're going to talk about is Sir Criston Cole.
Oh, this dick.
Oh boy. The man who went from an honorable protector to psychotic and unstable. Criston has shifted his allegiance to Alicent by the end and will stop at nothing to see Rhaenyra suffer. I don't like him, and I loved him in the beginning.
I love the dichotomy because he had so much honor it broke him, I guess. I mean, because he's having this whole honor conflict, and I'm like, by having the affair, you weren't being honorable. You already broke your oath, so shut up. Like stop being a whiny bitch.
He is quite whiny. They've made he seemed like such a stoic, honorable, like just a genuinely good person who was trying to do everything right. People thought he was Ned
Stark again. Yep.
Or he thought he was Ned Stark. And I think in some ways he thought he was too, but it's one of those things where he just snapped. Like the way, I think it hurt him and messed with his mind so much for him to be so dishonorable because he obviously loved her. And that's why he was willing to fool around with Rhaenyra and tried to be with her and tried to swoon her away. And when he was met with that constant rejection while also kind of being used and played along the way, eventually he's at his lowest. He's about to get murdered, and Alicent, or he thinks he's about to get murdered, and Alicent gives him kind of that moment of opportunity to be better, a redemption for himself. And he sees this, unfortunately, not as just an opportunity to redeem himself, but to get revenge at the person who broke his heart. And it's just so pitiful and childish that it makes me want to punch him in the throat.
Yeah, I mean, well, I've got two issues with that character as a whole. Number one, so he can beat the shit out of Laenor's guard / boyfriend, but nobody knows that. They just think it's his bodyguard or whatever. Beats him to death in the middle of a wedding reception, and he still is employed. Like, Rhaenyra doesn't go, okay, we should probably send him away. He's obviously unstable. Instead,
he's obviously unstable.
We just let him, because if I'm the king, well, he seems a little rash. If I'm the king, I wouldn't want that guy anywhere near my wife. That dude seems like an obvious lunatic. So yeah. I don't know how that even comes to pass. And also, I don't know, I wouldn't let him near my kids if I'm Rhaenyra. So, there's some of that too.
Yeah, and I mean, at this point, what can you do? She can't escape him because now he's with the queen. He has the queen's guard. Yeah.
And he almost killed himself. He wasn't almost murdered, but I guess they might have almost murdered him, and she gave him a pass or whatever. But he would have been murdered had she done like normally. Sure. He would have been hung, I think, for that. But she gives him some grace. And probably should have. If I run the kingdom and you're killing the guests, I have a problem with this.
That's the part that he should have been murdered for, not for him sleeping with the princess.
Yeah, I don't blame him. Go live your best life, brother. I get it. But on the same token, don't kill the guests at the wedding reception. That's frowned upon.
It is. But you know what? There's got to be some bloody murder in a Game of Thrones wedding.
There does, but
that's just how it is.
You got to have reasonable repercussions too, and that one is, I think, for a lot of people, was a big stretch. Like, why is he still here? That was too far for him to still be employed anywhere near the king himself.
Despite him being the only one with real battle experience, I think in most normal situations, they would have been like, let's choose the runner-up. Well, let's find our next best.
That and the fact that why on earth would you ever want someone that just did that next to my daughter and her husband, who it was his guard, you just beat the shit out of to death? Mm-hmm. That's just. Yep. I think it's a weak story point, personally.
Yeah. So let's do just a couple rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Who is your favorite character
Daemon.
Of House of the Dragon? Same.
But
I love him.
Aemond is pretty close, honestly.
It's because they have the same thing. It's like something about their personality where they're like, I think you coined it as mischievous. They're both mischievous and fun and like very sleuthy. And we love that. I
love characters where I cannot predict what they're going to do. And those are the two. Plus, I love leaners. There's something about leaning that I'm into. And
it does feel badass. What is the best moment in the first season?
In the entire first season?
Mm-hmm.
Probably the strong moment where, because I did not catch why it was so offensive at first when he starts talking. Let's raise our glass to these strong boys, and I'm just like, why are they so pissed off about this? Like they're reacting very negatively. And then I'm like, oh, that guy's name was Strong. And then I rewatch it, and it just has so much more punch once you get it. And it's played magnificently because he does it so underhandedly and subtle. So that's my favorite overall scene.
My best moment, my favorite moment is, and it's just because it touched me in my heart, is the father-daughter moment where Viserys walks down
so good.
to the Iron Throne. It's the only time, apparently, someone on the internet had looked and found that he had been cut pretty much every other time he sat in the throne, except for this time. He didn't get hurt. And he just cripple walked his way all the way to the end. And he made sure that no matter what, even when Alicent came up to him and was like, you need to take meds for the pain, he said, no, I want my head to be clear. Mm-hmm. He was so intentional that he was going to be present and be the father that Rhaenyra was asking for. And I just feel like that is the biggest dedication of love and parenthood that you could ever ask for.
Yeah, I remember watching that going, yep. Because I remember when she asked him for that, the first thing I thought of was, I would make a statement. You have to make a statement, because she's right. She's not wrong. She's absolutely right. You have to make a statement. And that was such a beautiful, beautiful scene. Like I said, I think he was phenomenal in that whole episode. He was just absolutely phenomenal. But you're right. That's a pretty fantastic scene. So I should have probably said that, but I'm glad you brought it up.
That's all right. I'm here to pick it all up for both of us. What's the threat or character that is leaving you wondering what happened or what's going to happen the most?
Probably. Oh God, what is Feet Guy's name? I always call him Tarantino.
Laris?
I always call him Tarantino because Tarantino. It's Lord Tarantino.
Lord of Harrenhal.
Okay, so Lord of Harrenhal. Whatever he's gonna do next, because he's the most. I don't know
devious.
What his goal is. Character.
He literally murdered his family in a fire so he could be the Lord.
Right.
And used Alicent, the queen, as a scapegoat for it.
But
and was like, I did it for you.
But
bitch, you did it so you could be Lord.
Right, but
what are you talking
he's still
about?
very much working for something. I know he could never be king, so I don't know what he's working for, but it's fascinating to me. Fascinating. Maybe he wants to marry her. I don't know.
He is obsessed with her.
She's very attractive. I get it.
Mm-hmm. Can I mention I was very surprised that they put Olivia Cook in it, like a notable actress.
Yeah, usually it's people you don't know, right? Well, they had Sean Bean, and he was pretty freaking known. No, and everybody should have saw his death coming because it's Sean Bean. Brief. So
that's fair. The thread that I'm curious where it's going to go, aside from the most obvious ones, is I'm curious what's going to happen to Aemon and his dragon Vhagar. I'm curious because you can't do anything to punish the biggest dragon in Westeros. But I'm curious what's going to happen if he is going to be allowed to keep that dragon, because he technically, I don't know if it's technically or not. He acquired that dragon from someone else and claimed it as his own. And so will he be able to keep it, or what is Alicent going to do? I'm curious.
Aemon's dragon?
Yeah, after he killed Aemon's dragon is Vhagar, after he killed Aegon.
Is that confirmed?
Or not
Vhagar
Aegon.
is the biggest one?
Yes, in Westeros.
Okay. I bet you there's another one that's bigger. I bet you there is.
I think there might be one that's bigger, but I don't know that it's in the show right now.
Oh, well, I don't want to know then. Don't tell me. But I feel like there's going to be, because that one that Daemon was sitting, pretty with at the end, that he's awakening and trying to snap into submission, that one looked bigger. I could be wrong.
Biggest one died. So Vhagar is the biggest. It's the largest dragon that's alive.
One more reason why Luke was stupid.
Vhagar is 181 years old and still fucking people up.
Good for him. Yeah, attaboy.
All right, so let's talk about what your favorite fight or battle sequence is. And we're a little bit lackluster in this season, but what's your favorite?
So easy. The crab feeder scene is definitely the best. I think that's a no-brainer, honestly. It's crab feeder scene was awesome because he goes on a suicide mission. It's basically a kamikaze mission. Daemon just goes on because that's how stubborn he is. He's not going to take his brother's help. Nah, bitch, I'll do this myself. Even if it kills me, I am done. And he ends up winning, and it's a total fluke, but he wins. And even he can't believe it. He's like, holy shit, I just won. Here you go, brother, bitch. And then he even bows to him because he knows he's trying to get back in his good graces, and then blows it right after that. I mean, he's so Daemon.
So Daemon.
So Daemon.
I did love that sequence. That's also my favorite, I think, because it shows you how dangerous he can be to himself. To your point, he 100% would not have survived that if there weren't others who came in to his aid. Mm-hmm. He would have been dead for sure. And he knew that. He knew going into it that I'm going to die doing this, but he wanted to go out with a bang, and he would have, but he still won that like a real badass. The other honorable mention fight scene that I really loved, in its more mild probably in comparison to that, but the scene where Princess Rhaenyra slaughters the boar, because it was just so badass, and she has blood all over. She lets loose all of her aggression on that thing, and then she brings it back for them to eat dinner. I freaking loved it.
Yeah, that was cool. Mm-hmm. That was a cool scene. And important for her character, too, to show she's not somebody to be trifled with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about, now that we're at the end, going forward, since neither of us have read the books that this comes from, who do you think will end up on the throne? What do you think is going to happen?
I don't think Alicent will. I don't think Aegon will. I don't think Rhaenyra will. Rhaenyra, sorry. These names. Can't it just be Bob and Alice? Honestly, I don't know. I don't really have an impression. I know we could just look at the book, but I don't read the book. You don't read the book, like you said. So I
don't want to know.
No, I don't want to know. I like the surprise of it. I want to be like, holy shit, that happened? I feel like it's going to be something that's going to piss us off, like an Aemond.
That's an interesting
It's not going to be a happy ending. It's just not.
Well, it can't be Rhaenyra, and it can't be Alicent, and I think by that account, it also can't be Aegon. So I doubt it would ever be Daemon, because nobody in the realm is going to allow Daemon. It's not even just that Viserys wasn't going to allow it. Nobody's going to allow it because he's so unpredictable and just catastrophic.
He'd rule like Joffrey, too, in a way.
He would. I wonder if any of the Valyrian family will be on the Iron Throne by the end.
I think it's going to have to be a Targaryen because of the Mad King was a Targaryen. So I think it stays in the Targaryen bloodline. It's just...
It could still be a Valyrian Targaryen child. It could be one of the daughters. Rhaena.
I don't know if that checks, but maybe.
I don't know either. Who do you think survives the war?
Nobody except whoever ends up on that throne. That's what I think. I think everybody's fair game at this point. I am not going to put bets on who's going to make it. If I had to, jeez. No, I think everybody but whoever ends up on the throne is probably going to die.
That's probably right. Who is going to be your saddest death, do you think?
Or actually, you know what? I think Alicent might live. I think she might live and regret the choices that she has made. Like that'll be our penance is, oh my God, I caused all this. I think that would be a great ending to that character.
Especially when she realizes that that's not what his words meant on the deathbed.
Yep. Who would be the saddest death? Is that what you said?
Yeah, for you. Who would make you the saddest to see killed?
Well, as of right now, Daemon, just because he's the most engaging character, but I'm still going to go with Daemon. Yeah, I love an unpredictable character, and there's two of them on this show, and they look the exact same. So either one of those doppelgangers.
Father and son just going for a stroll. Yeah, I think I would probably be saddest by Daemon passing away, just being murdered. I think it'll probably be on his own accord. He's going to go out on his own terms the way he wants. but I don't see him surviving.
I don't. I think it's Game of Thrones. I totally think they'll flip that on its script. I think that's what everyone in the world's going to expect. And it's going to be, he's going to die in the most bitch way possible. It's going to be like Tywin Lannister when he died in the toilet. You know, it's just like, what? That's how you kill this guy?
Embarrassing. Just embarrassing.
Yep. That's what it's going to be.
Well, that's it for our House of the Dragon spoiler reaction cast.
Thanks for listening.
We have 2 years.
Yeah, at least a year, probably 2. They are filming pretty quick. They've been doing pre-production, so season 2 shouldn't be too far off.
Well, we are going to close this up and leave King's Landing. Thank you so much to everyone for listening. I hope that everyone enjoyed House of the Dragon, regardless of where you sit on Allison Hightower, and you may be wrong. But remember, you can find us at thehollywoodoutsiders.com. Wherever you do your podcasting, you can find us on that app. Remember to rate, review, and subscribe. We appreciate you. More than anybody, we appreciate patreon.com subscribers. We love you guys. You're the best, and that's where you get special exclusive content and bonus episodes and behind-the-scenes looks at some of the stuff that we podcasters do for the Hollywood Outsider. So make sure that you share the show with a friend, tell people you love it, and let us know your thoughts on House of the Dragon.
And remember, the next time you go to the theater or sit comfortably on your couch, on your ass, watching House of the Dragon, buy popcorn.